You know what's crazy? While everyone's obsessing over tech billionaires and crypto kings, there's a woman in Singapore who built an empire so massive that her wealth could literally buy thousands of luxury condos in the heart of the city. And here's the kicker. Most people have no idea who she is. But before I reveal her identity, we need to talk about the other incredibly powerful women who are reshaping Singapore's financial landscape, because this list is absolutely mind-blowing. Singapore isn't just Asia's financial hub anymore. It's become a playground for some of the wealthiest, most influential women on the planet. These aren't your typical heiresses who inherited daddy's money and called it a day. No, these are women who hustled, strategized, and in some cases, started from literally nothing to build billion-dollar empires. And the numbers we're about to dive into will make your jaw drop. So buckle up, because we're counting down the 7 richest women in Singapore. And trust me, by the time we get to number 1, you're going to be completely shocked. Let's start at number 7. Number 7. Ong Ching. Coming in at number 7, we have Ong Ching, and her story is the perfect example of why it's never too late to chase your dreams. In 2006, this woman did something that most people would think is absolutely insane. She left a lucrative career at a law firm she founded, walked away from all that security, and decided to jump headfirst into property development. Now you might be thinking, that's financial suicide, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Together with her business partner Lenny Superman, Ong Ching founded KOP Properties, and this is where things get interesting. KOP Properties didn't just become another real estate company fighting for scraps in Singapore's competitive market. They went big, acquiring the sites for the Ritz-Carlton Residences, which was the famous hotel chain's first ever venture into residential property. Think about the boldness of that move. She wasn't playing it safe. She was going after one of the most prestigious names in luxury hospitality and convincing them to trust her vision. Today, KOP Properties, along with KOP Hospitality and KOP Entertainment, form the larger holdings company KOP Limited. And Ong Ching's net worth? We're looking at around $940 million. Almost $1 billion from a career change that happened when most people are thinking about slowing down. That's not just impressive, it's borderline legendary. But here's what makes her story even more powerful. She proved that expertise in one field can absolutely translate to success in another. Her legal background, her understanding of contracts, regulations, and negotiations, all of that became ammunition in the property development world. She didn't need to know how to pour concrete or design buildings. She needed to know how to structure deals, manage relationships, and see opportunities where others saw obstacles. Number 6. Selene Tang. Moving to number 6, and this is where the wealth really starts to escalate. We're talking about Selene Tang, and if you think her story is typical, think again. Celine and her husband Gordon Tang moved to Singapore from Guangdong in the early 1990s, and they had one goal: dominate the real estate market. Now, Singapore's property scene isn't exactly welcoming to newcomers. It's ruthless, competitive, and requires serious capital and connections. But Selene Tang wasn't intimidated. Before moving to Singapore, she studied literature at China People's University for Police Officers, which is now known as People's Public Security University of China. And get this, she actually worked as an assistant judicial officer of Shantou Longhu District Court in China. So we're talking about someone who understands law, order, and bureaucracy at a fundamental level. She knew how systems worked, and she used that knowledge to navigate Singapore's complex property regulations. The Tang power couple now owns a controlling stake in KOP Group, a Singapore-listed property and investment management firm. And while exact individual figures for Selene's personal wealth aren't always separated from her husband's, we're looking at a substantial fortune built entirely from strategic real estate investments. They didn't inherit this wealth. They didn't win a lottery. They studied the market, identified opportunities, and executed perfectly. What's fascinating about Selene Tang is her versatility. A degree in literature, a career in judicial work, and then boom, she becomes a real estate mogul. That's not a straight path. That's someone who understands that success isn't about following a predetermined route. It's about adapting, learning, and being fearless enough to enter completely new territories. Most people would look at that career trajectory and say, it doesn't make sense. But Selene Tang looked at it and saw unlimited potential. And here's something most people don't realize about these women at positions 6 and 7. They're operating in a city-state where land is scarce, regulations are tight, and competition is absolutely brutal. Singapore's real estate market isn't like anywhere else in the world. Every square meter is precious. Every development has massive implications. And these women aren't just participating in this market, they're major players shaping the landscape of one of the world's most expensive cities. So we've got a lawyer turned property developer worth almost $1 billion, and a former judicial officer who conquered Singapore's real estate scene with her husband. And we're only at number 7 and 6. Can you imagine what's coming next? Number 5. Fan Hongwei. Now let's jump to number 5. And this is where we need to talk about someone who literally changed the game for women in business across Asia. Fan Hongwei. And before you've even heard her full story, you need to understand something crucial. This woman didn't just build a company. She built an empire that touches millions of lives every single day. And most people using her services have absolutely no idea who she is. Fan Hongwei is the co-founder of Hai Di Lao International. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, you're missing out on one of the most successful restaurant chains in the world. But here's where her story gets absolutely wild. She and her husband Zhang Yong started this hotpot restaurant business back in 1994 in Jianyang, Sichuan province. Now think about that for a second. 1994, China wasn't the economic powerhouse it is today. They weren't starting with venture capital or angel investors. They were grinding it out in a small city, serving hotpot and betting everything on exceptional service. And exceptional service became their superpower. Hai Di Lao didn't just serve food, they created an experience. Free manicures while you wait, phone holders at your table, staff who would literally dance and pull noodles right in front of you, entertainment, hospitality, and food all merged into something nobody had seen before. Customers weren't just coming for the hotpot anymore. They were coming for the entire Hai Di Lao experience. Fast forward to today, and Hai Di Lao has over 1,400 locations worldwide. We're talking about a restaurant empire that spans China, Singapore, the United States, Canada, Australia, you name it. And Fan Hongwei's net worth, brace yourself. We're looking at approximately $2.1 billion, that's billion with a B, from a single hotpot restaurant in Sichuan to being one of the wealthiest women in Singapore. That's not just success, that's legendary status. But what makes Fan Hongwei's story even more incredible is the timing. She and her husband moved to Singapore and became citizens, positioning themselves in one of Asia's most strategic business hubs. They didn't just think local, they thought global from day one. And when Hai Di Lao went public in 2018 on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, the IPO raised over $963 million. Think about the scale of that. A restaurant company, not a tech startup, not a pharmaceutical giant. A restaurant company raising nearly $1 billion because investors believed in the vision. Now here's what's fascinating. While tech entrepreneurs get all the glory and headlines, Fan Hongwei proved that traditional businesses, when executed with innovation and obsessive attention to customer experience, can generate massive wealth. She took something as simple as hotpot, a meal that Chinese families have been enjoying for generations, and turned it into a global phenomenon worth billions. Number 4. Kwee Siew Eng. Moving to number 4, and we need to talk about someone whose wealth is so tied to Singapore's identity that her family name is practically synonymous with luxury and success. Kwee Siew Eng. And if you recognize that last name, you should, because the Kwee family is real estate royalty in Singapore. Kwee Siew Eng's father founded Pontiac Land Group, and this isn't just another property development company. Pontiac Land is responsible for some of Singapore's most iconic luxury properties. We're talking about projects that define Singapore's skyline and set the standard for what luxury living means in Southeast Asia. But here's what separates Kwee Siew Eng from your typical heiress story. She didn't just inherit wealth and coast on her father's success. She actively manages and grows the family empire. Her net worth is estimated at around $2.2 billion, and she holds significant stakes in some of the most valuable properties in Singapore. But what makes her position so powerful is the strategic nature of her family's holdings. They don't just own buildings, they own landmarks, properties that will appreciate for decades because they're in prime locations that Singapore will always value. Think about it this way: Singapore is a tiny island nation with limited land. Every single development decision matters because space is at an absolute premium. The Kwee family understood this decades ago and positioned themselves to own the most valuable pieces of real estate in the country. That's not luck, that's generational strategic thinking. And Kwee Siew Eng represents the next generation of that legacy. She's not just maintaining what her father built, she's expanding it, modernizing it, and ensuring that Pontiac land remains relevant in a rapidly changing real estate market. Because here's the thing about inherited wealth. It can disappear just as quickly as it appeared if you don't know how to manage it. History is filled with families who squandered fortunes within a generation or two. The fact that the Kwee family continues to grow their wealth shows serious business acumen. Number 3. Kuok Hui Kwong. Now we're entering the top 3, and this is where things get absolutely insane. The wealth we're about to discuss isn't just impressive by Singapore standards. This is world-class Forbes list, playing with the big boys type of money. And the women at these positions didn't just get lucky or marry well. They built, they strategized, and they dominated their industries in ways that most people can't even comprehend. At number 3, we have Kuok Hui Kwong, and her family name should make you sit up and pay attention immediately. The Kuok family is legendary in Asian business circles, and for good reason. Kuok Hui Kwong's uncle is Robert Kuok, also known as the Sugar King of Asia, one of the wealthiest people in Malaysia and a business titan whose influence stretches across multiple continents. But Kuok Hui Kwong isn't riding on her uncle's coattails. She carved out her own massive fortune through Wilmar International. And if you don't know what Wilmar is, you need to understand that this company is absolutely everywhere. Wilmar International is one of Asia's leading agribusiness groups, and they're involved in everything from palm oil to sugar, flour, rice, and consumer products. We're talking about a company that processes and merchandises agricultural products that end up in millions of households across Asia and beyond. The scale is almost incomprehensible. Wilmar operates over 500 manufacturing plants and an extensive distribution network that covers 50 countries. Kuok Hui Kwong's net worth sits at approximately $2.3 billion, and she holds significant stakes in Wilmar International alongside her family members. But what makes her position particularly powerful is the essential nature of the business. Tech companies can crash, luxury brands can fall out of favor, but food, agricultural products, people will always need to eat. Wilmar positioned itself at the foundation of the supply chain, controlling the processing and distribution of staple products that billions of people depend on daily. And here's what's brilliant about the Kuok family strategy. They didn't chase trendy industries or try to be the next big thing. They looked at fundamental human needs and asked themselves, how can we control the supply chain for products people will always need? That's generational thinking. That's building wealth that will last for centuries, not just decades. Kuok Hui Kwong also represents something incredibly important in Asian business culture. She's part of a family dynasty that has maintained power and influence across multiple generations and multiple countries. The Kuok family operates in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and China. They're not limited by borders. They think regionally, they execute globally, and they've built a business empire that's virtually recession-proof because it's based on agricultural commodities. Number 2. Phaik Hwa. Now let's talk about number 2, and this is where we need to address someone who took a completely different path to wealth. Phaik Hwa, and her story is all about leadership, vision, and being willing to take on massive responsibility when the stakes are highest. Phaik Hwa served as the CEO of SMRT Corporation, Singapore's major public transport operator, from 2012 to 2016. Now you might be thinking, public transport CEO? How does that translate to massive wealth? And that's where you need to understand how Singapore works. Leadership positions in major corporations, especially government-linked companies, come with substantial compensation packages and stock options. But more importantly, these positions open doors to board memberships, consulting roles, and investment opportunities that most people never get access to. But Phaik Hwa's wealth doesn't just come from her SMRT tenure. Before that, she spent over 2 decades at DBS Bank, one of the largest banks in Southeast Asia, where she held various senior positions. She was also a nominated member of parliament in Singapore. This woman has been operating at the highest levels of Singapore's business and political elite for decades. She understands power structures, she knows how to navigate complex organizations, and she's built a network that money can't buy. Her estimated net worth is around $2.4 billion. And while exact details of her wealth portfolio aren't always public, we're looking at someone who has diversified investments across multiple sectors: real estate, financial instruments, private equity, you name it. She didn't put all her eggs in one basket. She built a fortress of wealth that's protected from market volatility. What makes Phaik Hwa's story particularly interesting is that she represents the executive path to wealth. She wasn't an entrepreneur who started a company from scratch. She climbed the corporate ladder, took on increasingly challenging roles, and leveraged her expertise and connections to build substantial wealth. And in Singapore's meritocratic system, this path is absolutely viable. The government-linked companies pay top dollar for top talent, and if you can deliver results, the rewards are enormous. She's also a powerful example of how women can succeed in traditionally male-dominated industries like transportation and banking. When she took over SMRT, she inherited a company facing serious challenges with service disruptions and public criticism. That's not an easy position. That's walking into a firestorm and being expected to fix decades of problems while the entire country watches your every move. The pressure must have been immense. Now, are you ready for number 1? Because this is where everything we've talked about so far gets completely blown out of the water. The richest woman in Singapore isn't just wealthy, she's operating on a level that most billionaires dream about. And her story is so incredible, so unexpected, that when you hear how she built her empire, you're going to be absolutely stunned. Number 1. Shu Ping. At number 1, the richest woman in Singapore is Shu Ping, and her net worth is estimated at a staggering $4.5 billion. Let that sink in for a second. $4.5 billion. That's not just rich, that's change the world, buy islands, influence governments type of money. And here's what makes her story absolutely perfect. She built this fortune alongside her husband doing the exact same thing that Fan Hongwei did at number 5. Hotpot restaurants. Wait, you're probably thinking, didn't we already talk about Hai Di Lao? Yes, we did. And here's where this gets absolutely wild. Shu Ping is married to Zhang Yong, the co-founder of Hai Di Lao. She's Fan Hongwei's sister-in-law. The same company, the same hotpot empire, but because of how the ownership structure works and how the wealth is distributed, Shu Ping has emerged as the wealthiest woman in Singapore. Think about what this means. 2 women, related by marriage, both sitting on multi-billion-dollar fortunes, both derived from the same restaurant company. This isn't a tech unicorn. This isn't a pharmaceutical company that discovered a miracle drug. This is Hotpot. This is taking a traditional Chinese meal and turning it into one of the most successful restaurant chains in human history. Shu Ping and Zhang Yong's journey started the same way as Fan Hongwei and her husband. They were grinding it out in Sichuan, serving customers, perfecting their service model, and dreaming big. But what separated Hai Di Lao from every other restaurant wasn't just the food. It was the obsessive focus on customer experience that bordered on being excessive, and customers loved it. The company's IPO in 2018 was a watershed moment. When Hai Di Lao listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, the response was overwhelming. Investors weren't just buying into a restaurant chain, they were buying into a proven business model that had demonstrated incredible scalability and customer loyalty. The stock price surged, and overnight, Shu Ping and her family's paper wealth skyrocketed. But here's what makes Shu Ping's position as the richest woman in Singapore so fascinating. She represents the ultimate validation of a simple business principle that gets lost in our obsession with tech and innovation. Find something people love, do it better than anyone else, and scale it relentlessly. Hai Di Lao didn't reinvent food. They reinvented the experience of eating out. They understood that in an increasingly digital world, people crave genuine human connection and service that makes them feel valued. And the timing of their move to Singapore was absolutely brilliant. Singapore is the gateway to Southeast Asia. It's politically stable, business-friendly, and strategically located. By becoming Singapore citizens, Shu Ping and Zhang Yong positioned themselves to expand throughout the region while enjoying all the benefits of Singapore's favorable tax structure and world-class infrastructure. The Hai Di Lao empire now employs over 100,000 people worldwide. Think about the scale of that operation. 100,000 people working for a company that started with 4 people in a small city in Sichuan. That's not just business success, that's creating an economic ecosystem that supports families, communities, and entire supply chains. But what really sets Shu Ping apart at number 1 isn't just her net worth. It's the story of what that wealth represents. She and her husband didn't come from money. They didn't have fancy degrees from Western universities. They didn't have connections to Singapore's elite when they started. They had a vision, work ethic, and an unwavering commitment to customer service that became legendary. And here's the kicker that most people miss. Heidi Lau's success isn't replicable by just anyone. Hundreds of restaurant chains have tried to copy their model. Free manicures, entertainment, over-the-top service, but none of them have captured the magic that Heidi Lau has. Because it's not about the individual features, it's about the culture. It's about training staff to genuinely care about customer experience. It's about creating an environment where employees feel valued, so they naturally pass that feeling on to customers. Shu Ping's $4.5 billion fortune is a testament to the power of execution. In a world where everyone has access to information, where business models can be copied overnight, where competition is fiercer than ever, execution is everything. Having a great idea means nothing if you can't execute it flawlessly at scale. And Heidi Lau has executed at a level that few companies in any industry can match. So there you have it. The 7 richest women in Singapore, counting down from Ching at $940 million all the way to Shu Ping at $4.5 billion. These aren't just wealthy women. These are empire builders, risk takers, and visionaries who saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. They operated in industries ranging from real estate to hospitality to agriculture, proving that there's no single path to massive wealth. What's even more incredible is that many of these women started with nothing or came from modest backgrounds. They weren't born into Singapore's elite. They earned their place through decades of hard work, strategic thinking, and the courage to bet big when it mattered most. And now, they're not just wealthy, they're influential. They're shaping industries, creating jobs, and setting examples for the next generation of women who dare to dream big. The richest woman in Singapore made her fortune selling hotpot. Let that be a lesson that success isn't about picking the trendiest industry or the most glamorous business. Success is about finding what you do best, doing it better than anyone else, and scaling it to levels most people can't even imagine. Shu Ping and her Heidi Lau empire prove that sometimes the simplest ideas, executed with absolute excellence, can create generational wealth that changes everything.